Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this review, we're looking at Reaper, the door that came out of kind of left field, and for a long time was the upstart of the doors, and in some people's minds, it sort of still is. It did things a little differently, but it did a lot very much the same. It's probably dug itself in a lot more in some terms of being sort of same. There's a lot to recommend about Reaper, but there are some issues to be aware of if you choose to go down this path. It is an immensely powerful door in that there are lots of things you can do in here, and you can achieve as high a quality result as you know how to do. The software will not help you get a nicer result, but it will not hinder you as such once you understand how it operates. But until you understand how it operates, that's where you're really going to meet a lot of the downside of Reaper as a platform. Now, before people get all kind of bent out of shape, because some people got bent out of shape over my review and my impressions of Cakewalk in its current installation as a BandLab thing, this is my review. This is my opinion. Now, every door has a paradigm of its own. Now, a paradigm, if you're not fully sure what the word means, is like a culture. You know, if we take our English white boy culture and then suddenly put ourselves in a very different culture, whether that's, say, like a Middle Eastern culture or an African culture, there are going to be differences. So to be very simplistic, as an English white boy, at the end of a meal, if I belch, that's a bad. Oh, my bad, that was very rude. It was tasteless. And yet, apparently, in certain Arabic cultures, if you don't belch at the end of the meal, then you have signified that it was not a good meal, that you are not satisfied. So I can understand how people from each culture may see the belch or lack thereof as being a terrible thing. But neither's right nor wrong, it's merely what we're used to. Now, with doors, a lot of our opinions, what people turn into door wars, trying to stab each other in the face over what they say is good or bad door, is based on cultural understanding and what you're used to. As a musician of over 30 years, and mix engineer, trained mix engineer, of over 30 years, my approach is always to look at, does this help me achieve the results that I need? More importantly, does this help me achieve the results that the song needs? And some doors help me in that. Some doors don't help me in that. Now, the doors that I like are not necessarily the doors that you're going to like. It's all about workflow. No door in particular has any feature or ability to do anything that another does not. Often that perception that something's got better features is really just that somebody hasn't understood how to do it within another culture, another paradigm, another environment. Reaper is a complex environment, as is the nature of a digital audio workstation. They have become huge, complex beasts, and this is a very complex one, which becomes both a strength and a weakness. It depends on what you want to do, where you're at. For some of you who have any familiarity with the program, straight away you may be thinking, oh, that looks different. Reaper is very skinnable, which we will get into in a moment. We'll start, however, just by looking at, well, who are Reaper? Reaper are Cockos. And we've still got the F11 thing come up. They work on a very different paradigm from a lot of other software. The paradigm was a very common one at the time when they started, and that was shareware, as in programs that people would pass around freely amongst each other, and you could generally use them with very few limits or sometimes even no limits, and they just hoped that in time you would say, look, I've got enough value from this and I will pay for it. And Reaper is delivered under that paradigm still, which is unusual these days because most times it's pay or go away. It's a very fair model, it's a very open model, but it does lead to some misapprehension. So a lot of people will tell you Reaper is free. Reaper is not free. Reaper never was free, and probably never will be free, and nor should it be, because there's a massive amount of person hours, because we can't be sexist here, involved in creating and maintaining a DAW. And one of the upsides for people with Reaper is that there's a massive amount of update. There's constant flow of updates and bug fixes and this, that, and the other. Some of those bug fixes are probably needed, but they're constantly working on the software. So thinking that it's free means you're really stealing. Their payment model is incredibly fair. You can use the software until you see that you are really getting value out of it. But after, I think it's 60 days, you really should pay. If you are not earning, or if you're earning under $20,000 a year from your use of Reaper, then you can pay $60. And $60 is way cheaper than really any other DAW, including the free ones, in my opinion. And that lasts for 1 or 2 versions. I haven't really looked much into that. And that's not point versions, that's the main version. So at the moment it's on 6.73 or something like that. And it says up to 7.999. So if I paid my $60, I wouldn't need to pay $60 again until it hit version 8. And that's quite a way away. So bearing in mind, most DAWs will have you paying 120 or 150 a year, or in the case of Reason, it's more like that every 2, maybe 3 years. The $60 is a very, very fair price for a lot of work that has been done. Skins. Skins are both good and bad. Skins allow you to change the way the program looks so that you can optimize it for your preference. Now, skinning gets pretty complex. That's one of the downsides of it, that is not easy to just rearrange. But we'll have a quick look. Themes. There are tons of themes you can download from the page that I showed before. There's a default theme. And inside a lot of themes, and the default theme has a lot, then you've got layout options as well. So you can choose how you want things to be laid out. And that can change the way things look quite a lot. Good and bad. The good thing is that when you make these changes, unlike in Cakewalk, they stick. Just about everything that you save will come back exactly as you saved it. And that generally is very, very good. I don't like a dark background. I really never have. I know how it looks sexy, but to me, I just find it too hard to work in. So I tried alternate. I like that it gives us a clearer fader. But then I really didn't like the fact that I'm struggling to find the box to open up the effects that are on the channel. It's frustrating in a lot of the skins that the ability to access things gets difficult. So having downloaded and run this whole routine that changes or simplifies the amount of information that's put in front of me at any given point in time, that's nice. We'll look at Reaper across 3 screens. I showed this with Cakewalk. Cakewalk didn't handle multiple screens super well. Reaper does handle them pretty well. Not the best, but pretty well. Well enough to not be complaining. This is me running a Reaper skin across 3 screens. So I've got my main screen, which is what you're seeing here with my head on it. I've got a little old 19 and another 24. So I've spread the mixer onto one and all the MIDI stuff out onto another. And here's another skin spread across those 3 screens. I have always struggled with Reaper over the years, and I've never taken it up because to me it just feels like such a cluttered environment. Now I know that that's a personal preference. A lot of people like the fact that there are 300 buttons in any given situation. Now I've actually installed an extra plugin, it's like a script type thing that strips away quite a lot of those knobs and buttons because they're really not necessary. Now I found that in the community, there are a lot of people within the community, if you choose wisely, who give a lot of good information. So with a little bit of Googling and watching some videos and what have you, chances are you'll find the answer to whatever, or failing that you can go into forums, and Reaper hosts one of their own forums, and one of the first things is a setup for beginners. Now, while I'm in no way a beginner, I thought, look, let's have a look at this because it promises to solve the biggest problem that I have with Reaper. So I installed the things that it said to install. So if you go, hang on, Benedict, but you're missing some of the buttons and stuff. Yeah, because this has stripped them out. Because as far as I'm concerned, while they have a purpose, I don't need to see them all the time. To give you a comparison, in Reason, people will look at the Reason screen and go, oh, well, that just looks too simplistic. It looks like it's a child's toy. It doesn't have any of the features that I need, like the 300 buttons that are normally here. It's all there. It's just they're not thrown in my face all the time. I'm not overloaded with this 300 buttons. It also seems to give the option to add effects from here, which to me makes perfect sense. I found the other method of having to go through several windows really rather annoying. I'd rather move through menus quickly than windows, but comes down to a personal preference. Who's it for? Now, Reaper and many people in forums will tell you, oh, it's for everybody. Yeah, that's like, a $50,000 or $150,000 Stradivarius violin. Oh, yes, a beginner could use that. They could. Is it really the best path for them to invest that much money and all the commitment and all the difficulties that go with owning such a delicate instrument? Probably not. So I'm going to say that Reaper can be used by anybody, but it's not necessarily the best place for a beginner to start. Or if a beginner chooses to start here, then I would settle in understanding that this is going to throw you quite a lot of curveballs. Let me show you one of the curveballs. For some reason, and I have not worked out how to set this as a default, because when I click it, it doesn't stay clicked, as you will see. If I click on a track, I expect to hear the sounds. And this is how I expect it to be out of the box, because this is kind of how a door works. It's self-evident. What happened to Brass Riff 1? It's gone. I don't know what I did to make it go. I do recall asking automatic record arm when track selected, but it's got turned off. How that's happened may be my fault, but it's no longer there. And I've kept finding myself having to put it back on again, and when I started a new project, I'd have to go in and turn that back on again. Now, I've gone through preferences and can't find a way to make that automatically default to on. Now, if I have to go and find some script to automatically default that to on, it seems to me a major failing. That why can't we just have this automatically default to on? Because just about every door, when you click on a track or a channel, it gives you that sound. I get that some people may want to handle it differently, and that's great. But I'd rather that the options were consistent, not a thing that I have to search for and then sometimes find that it's come undone. Especially not at the beginning of something where I go, none of my sounds are working. That's a frustration I have, and you can say, oh, it's because you just don't know how it works. Yeah, but these days, modern software, we should not need to spend a lot of time working out how it works. Some of the finer points, yes, but some of the simple things, if we have to spend half an hour trying to make something simple work, chances are we're going to give up. So as a beginner, I'd say, yes, you can use this, but please go carefully, because there's a fair chance you're going to waste a lot of time getting stressed trying to solve something that probably would have been a lot easier in a different piece of software. You're just going to need to take your time to get your head around it. As a veteran who's been a power user of quite a few doors, I have really struggled with this and had to make a concerted effort to start to feel comfortable with it. All right, next bit is about composing in this environment, because a door is all about composing. Again, normally I would be running 3 screens, but we'll make do with one. So, a lot of the time I will start by and insert a virtual instrument on a track. If you just insert a new track, you can insert a virtual instrument on it, but then somehow they don't seem to be automatically connected. Again, that's a trap for the unwary, so probably easier just insert a virtual instrument on new track. They're given the option, and it's there, and it works. So, in this situation, I load it up. Oh, better want to click on it. Stephen Slade's free drum kit. Sounds nice. Doesn't run in Reason for some bizarre reason. The software runs, but then it refuses to find its sounds and renders itself somewhat useless, running around with drum kit widdershins. Nice sounds. Then we can add any kind of effects and things that we want. I would strongly advise, especially if you're a beginner, do not spend time adding processes and effects to things as you try to write your music. Very tempting to say, but I need the perfect sound before I can write my perfect song. All you're going to do is bog down, get your basic sound, and get going, which does lead us to a reasonable negative. And I think this really needs to be considered carefully, especially as a beginner. Reaper really doesn't come with any instruments. There might be one or two things that you can technically say is an instrument, but as such, it comes with no instruments. So the sounds that you hear here, if you haven't already noticed, they're all my Reason Rack plugin coming across. Reaper sounds nice, all DAWs sound nice. But in terms of inbuilt instruments, you'll quickly find there are none, which means that you then start to trawl around. Either you're spending money that, if you're a beginner, you may not quite know what you're looking for, and it's easy to spend money on things that don't work out very well for you long term, or you're getting yourself caught in what can be a vast trap of freeware and cut down plugins, which may not really do the job for you. I found it quite confusing to know how to start to put notes in. You've got to... How do we do this again? Sorry. Oh, yeah. You can press Control to get the pencil tool, and then you draw your clip in. You have to draw your clip in, otherwise you can't make any MIDI. You can change how this behaves, but it tends to go straight into looping. It works on the assumption that when you want to make your clip longer, you just want to loop it. That's okay if you're one of those people who only ever loops 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever, and never extends anything. Okay, but you'll have some difficulties if you try to change this. See how I've tried to change this, and all it's done is looped. If you only live in loop land, that may seem like the best thing ever. In the real world, what we need to do is to actually move into the piano roll and move our clip end here. It's there, but you've got to find it. And for a program with as many intricate features as Reaper, to not have the ability to change a clip length front and back easily is either a setting that I've missed, or like, come on guys. But you can do it, but you're going to have to find where it is so that you can do it, and have your cursor in the right place and the right mode to achieve the thing that you want. We get our pencil tool straight away. We can insert a note, we can make it longer, and we can make it change length, front and back. All of that is good, so the way it doesn't happen up there. We can grab the middle of it. Now you might note, this isn't playing the black note, the evil black notes. That's because we have the option to snap to a key and scale. That is a nice thing. You also have the ability to, and let's just kill this off. Let's go open this one here. You have the ability to see all your different tracks and channels, which for some bizarre reason I cannot. Oh, that's because this constantly has to be reset or something. It's one of those things that I come back, oh, there it is. It is there. It just seems awfully invisible. So forgive me, clearly I'm doing something wrong. And there's my lead. I don't know. This has caught me, and this is one of those things that frustrates the patootie out of me, because this was working fine for the last almost a week, and it was pretty reliable that I would see what I expected to see, and now I don't seem to see anything much. So forgive me for having kind of made a fool of myself and therefore you, but this is a massive downside of this kind of software, in that it seems like it works, it's sort of working, but then it's sort of not. Sorry, can't tell you what's wrong, and I'm not going to waste time trying to work out why it's wrong. This just will keep happening until you work out what it is that makes it happen. And while some wiseacre who's been doing this for a while and has solved this problem will say, oh, that's easy, you just do this, like I'm stupid. Why should I need to know how to just do this when in really good software, it knows not to make me have this problem in the first place. It knows not to make me have to look at this going, where did my notes go? Why is it broken? What's wrong here? I don't know. Another thing that I will say that is a little odd. Now, working on multiple screens is not an issue, but Reaper's got the docking thing, so we can put things like our mixer into a dock. Okay, great. That is good. But for some reason, we don't seem to be able to put the MIDI into the dock. So the MIDI is always a floating window. Ugh. With 3 screens, I got no problems because I floated on that screen over on the side, and it just stays there. Great, not a problem. But I know a lot of people are using one screen. I pity the fool, but that's their world. In which case, to me, it makes sense. Like most doors will dock the MIDI into the window, so when we click on the MIDI thing and we want to look at our MIDI, there's some of it, that, no, it's still not there, that it will come into a docked window. I don't know why it's not there. So that probably ends some of the composing, because I can't show you a lot more, seeing for some reason it doesn't want to show itself. But we can have a look at the composition as such. Oh, one thing that Reaper does have is a quite complicated, and this is kind of good, kind of bad, track manager. So I don't like that I need to have another window to manage how my tracks display, but it does provide a level of power. I can pick and choose what is visible and where. So in this case, I've used folder tracks, because it's a big thing in Reaper that you can put things in folders, and then we can manage how the folder behaves, like we can fold the folder up. So as you get into very high track count compositions or mixes, you can start to pick and choose what's in front of you. Great! They've done it here, but they couldn't do it in other areas. So I've chosen, because this is not giving me any particularly useful information, just to make it disappear, I've really chosen used these folders because they also act a lot like a bus. You can have buses and VCA tracks and this, that, and the other, and I think it's overly convoluted. Reason just has kind of one option, and it's a bus, and it works the way that all these 3 or 4 different versions in Reaper do, just in one go. But some people love the fact that there are 58 ways to solve the same simple problem. But you can pick and choose where something is visible. So here I've kept them visible in the mixer, because, as I say, I've run them as buses. So you can pick and choose what's visible and get an overview. The fact that I need to open a whole other window to do it, personally I find annoying. Some people love that. It's like, ooh, if I could have 3,000 windows open at once, I'd feel godlike. Personal preference, local culture. Looking through the composition as such, that's another thing that annoys me. Every time you click somewhere in here, it moves the playhead to that. That I get it, but that I find super annoying. So let's go back to where we were. Now, something I did like, but, well, struggle to show you properly for some unknown reason, is that it is actually easy to see all of the different information. Actually, I may have worked out why that doesn't work. Give me a moment. I may have worked out how to solve that. It might be in this track manager. We'll see if this solves it. No, not really. Wasting time. Just wasting time. And this is why I don't like Reaper. It wastes my time. Yes, obviously solvable, but something that worked before doesn't work now through some setting I can't find. What I did like whilst I was composing it, but I'm now infuriated about, is that it has quite a nice system for seeing all the MIDI tracks on the one MIDI screen. So I can see all my notes from my other tracks up against each other and work my harmonies. Not complex harmonies in here, but that is quite nice when it works. Automation. Automation is quite highly available through Reaper, and there are some good and some bad things about it. Yes, it's visible. I find it overly complex again, in that you've got too many different key commands to get different results, and that's largely because, and I spoke about this last time, as they've added features, they tend to accrete the features, as in put them on top of what was already there, rather than saying, okay, we might need to change some of our paradigm and work it in from the beginning. So where they got to the point of adding envelope shaping, you have to have a key command for it. And you might go, yeah, well, there's no biggie on that. But the trouble was that their most obvious way of shaping the envelope was already taken for something else. And whoop, even they're using the key command, not doing what I expect it's going to do. Maybe because I got the wrong key command. Oh, yeah, there it is. That's the right key command. That was sort of my bad. But you've got to remember a lot of key commands to actually get access to a lot of functions. But thankfully, their Control-Z undo has a lot of layers, so you can make lots of mistakes and Control-Z them back without really losing any problems. I shouldn't have to say that, but some programs, their Control-Z's not very good. So it is good. There are quite a lot of options, including, if we get into some of the delays, and we probably won't be able to see, yeah, you can see this. This number is moving around. There is actually a system which is somewhat hidden in here. And again, it's like, it shouldn't be hidden. It's such a big feature, especially for Reason users who tend to automate everything with LFOs borrowed from here, there, and everywhere. Or in Bitwig, where their modulation system is front and center. It's just central to everything that you're doing. You can go, oh, well, I'll grab that and put an LFO on it. It is making its way into Reaper, but it's a bit hidden, and easy to lose. So we would have to find it. Now that was, what was that? It was the bass. So if I find the bass here, now I've got to work out, well, how do I see? And again, I'm lost. How do I find? And I know this may have disappeared the button to do it, but I can't easily work out how to find the automation thing that's doing the automation. Again, this should not happen. Somebody with 30 years experience in using software like this should not be stalled at this point, unable to find something that they did a couple of days ago. So there is a way to add LFOs. It's a bit clunky. Well, it's actually extremely clunky compared to Bitwig, or of course Reason, which started right from the beginning with things being able to automate each other with their CV system. There is something built in. It works, but it's not elegant. Sorry, I can't show you better, because despite it working a couple of days ago and me having the whole thing prepared, it's no longer showing. As I say, partly could be my fault for having installed this thing to try to make the software less obtuse to use, but I don't know. I have no answer. I really have no answer. So it makes for a poorer review, but it makes for a very honest review, because unfortunately I have to say that the software, while incredibly powerful, is incredibly difficult to use. What's the point of having power if you can't use it? There's just no real sense. Fair enough if we have, like a gun has a safety on it to stop you from shooting yourself in the foot, and if you're not aware of it, you go click, 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 and nothing happens. But the safety is better there than not there, because more people have feet these days than they used to have before there was a safety, and they go, ooh, okay, better not do that again. So, yeah, but in this situation, it shouldn't need layers of obfuscation. It just means poor user interface design. So that ends composing, because I can't show you properly because the software, it's buggered me. It's buggered itself, because I'm not going to want to buy this now because it's made it too hard for me. And nor can I actually say to you, hey, this is a great way to go. Look how wonderful it is. Because you see, it's made me look stupid, made me feel stupid. And my great concern is it will do the same for you. So we'll move forward to mixing. Hopefully we can get a consistent result here. As I said, the ability to put things in folders, simply put, covers some of the functions of busing. Now with a bus, I will say generally you don't want to be using reverb sends. Put the reverb sends on the bus. I watched a whole video about solving the problems of reverb sends here whilst using an external fader or something to control them. And the whole way through I'm kind of scratching my head going, why don't you just turn off these reverb sends and put them on the bus? Because when you put things in a bus, you will see here I've done extra stuff. So if we start with my drums and we look at what's in here, we've got our drum player. That's just solo. Him. Solo works nicely. Solo is also including the reverb, so that all works nicely. That is a good thing. There is also the option to have a solo dim. So in other words, what that does is rather than making everything else disappear, you can set the level at which it makes every other track just get quieter. So you can set it to -12 or -18 or -20 or whatever, and you can still just hear everything else there. For some situations, that's really good. For others, not so good. But it is an option. I'm glad that it's not the default option, because it's not a thing that I love, but it is a nice option that's there. However, there is one problem with the system that they've used here, because the instrument goes in as an effects unit. If I disable effects, gone. My instrument is gone. To me, that makes very limited sense. That if I wanted my instrument to be gone, would I not just hit mute? Because when I want to turn my effects off, chances are I'm thinking I want to turn my effects off, not my drummer. So to achieve the same outcome, I have to open this up and turn them off. Or use a key command, which is shift-click. So you have to remember that. I mean, that's not shocking, but that's an annoying thing, which I fell into when I exported these stems, treating an instrument as an effect, while technically you might say it's okay, but there's a difference between a VST and a VST-I. So why it doesn't recognize, oh, look, that's an I, we probably want to leave that on, or we automatically should have put instruments in a different box. So when I press effects off, the instruments stay on, and I've just got to turn my effects off. Again, a little technical annoyance that just leads to little more than frustration. But we can open this up, we can layer on effects. Now, Reaper's effects are generally pretty good, but they are not super well organized, and they are not necessarily the easiest to use. They are quite similar in the sense to the argument that I had against the lovely Sonitas effects in Cakewalk, in that they are technically good, but not necessarily easy, especially for a beginner to use. This compressor has got like pre-comp. What's pre-comp? I know what that is, but I mean, it's going to be hard. They also tend often to default to having no activity at all. So you turn on your compressor and what's it doing? Nothing. I could set my... Where is my threshold? Oh, my threshold's here. I could set my threshold to somewhere else, but it's still going to do nothing. And I know that's just a tiny setting, but you know what? It's annoying as hell, because I turn on a compressor expecting it to compress things. Oh, don't want the weird name. But once you get there and you go, okay, I'll set this up, it's effective, it works. And quality and all of that is pretty good, and there are quite a lot of options to do things. So it puts it technically ahead of many simple compressors, but it puts it usability-wise quite a long way behind many compressors. Tip to the wise, you probably don't want to use auto makeup, because it does not make up what you've chopped off. It might do in some kind of simple mathematical terms, but you'll find that it just makes it louder than it was in the first place. Not really what you're trying to achieve with compression. Effects. The EQ is, again, good and fairly usable, but when you first open it up, it will be like this big, which is okay if you're just using the sliders, but if you want to use the drag 'em around thing, then you'll find it somewhat annoying. It's okay. It's not a bad sounding EQ. It's not a great sounding EQ, but there is nothing wrong with it. You can achieve whatever you need to with this, but you may just find, like most other things, that it's sort of overly complex and too many windows, and it's one of those things that it's going to do the job, but you'll have to get used to how it thinks. We've got our drums and our bass. They are both processed. Delay and EQ, same thing, and they're put into a bus. So that's going into a compressor and a distortion. Now, this is a thing we need to cover. It's a good and a bad thing. Reaper seems to come with a fairly limited set of effects and some massive holes in its effects. I'm looking at it going, there's no chorus. How can there be no chorus? I had to apply that weird LFO modulation to get modulating delays, which really annoyed me because I use modulating delay on just about everything. But there are the JS scripts, Jesusonic plugins, and the JS script is a script that Cockos were making before they made Reaper. It was designed to run on hardware, was a non-starter, and they moved into Reaper, which has been a massive starter for them. Good on them. But there are a whole pile of extra plugins filed under JS. Now, that's not a very promising thing for you to want to click on, especially seeing there are a whole lot of other things that are just kind of like, okay, this is confusing. JS. Jesusonic's an odd name, but whatever. It's kind of become a thing. But there are tons and tons of effects in here of varying usefulness. Many of them are on the underside of varying. Or are quite limited in their functionality. I have not opened this EQ, so I have no idea what to expect. But most of them have no user interface as such, which makes them, well, less than pleasing to use, as well as much harder to get your head around. Because when you look at I don't know, what have we got here? Well, at least here, you've got a visual sense of what's going on. When I'm looking here, let's say a Scream, I'm very used to Scream because of a lot of years, 13, 14 years, but also because we've got a lot of visual cues which the memory holds. That position there is the one that makes it louder and splattier. That's the one that changes the style of splattiness. They change the style of splattiness as well, and then that makes it kind of sound like it's going through a loudspeaker. I remember those positions. But when I'm stuck looking at something like this, and every plugin looks like this, it is much harder for the brain to remember what's what. And so we've got very little visual cue. There are some JS plugins that have a little bit of interfacing, and there are some that have actual visual GUIs. But it's a scripting system that's attracted a certain mentality, a very technical mentality to it. So a lot of the JS plugins, while technically capable, are not necessarily enjoyable to use, especially for a beginner. So good that they're there, bad that you're probably not going to get the easiest ride out of them, and that again throws you back into looking for VSTs, free VSTs, and this, that, and the other. I think that Reaper by now, especially how long they've been going, probably should have, even with their Jesusonic stuff, because it's their thing, have put together a core set of effects. They could have just called them the Reaper Studio effects or something like that, and they can form your baseline. And then you can go off into other boxes which are full of weird stuff. You can look through developers and all that, so that's all kind of cool. I showed you there was the other option for right-clicking, which may be there in other options, but it's definitely part of the thing that I plugged in. Sends and where things go is good and bad. I find it overly convoluted, but if you go to, and I think it's been disappeared in this system that I plugged in, actually, show track routing window. So no, that's very logical. We can show track routing window, and this is complex. It works, and it's technically flawless. However, most people can look at this and go, I have no idea how to fly this. This makes no sense. But if I wanted to create a new send or send it to an existing send, then I've got my existing, or I can add a new send, or I can add a send to all the tracks, which is if you've got all your tracks laid out and then you say I'm going to add a reverb, you might choose that one. But if I choose reverb, then I've now got a send going to that reverb, which I can come back in and manage, or I can remove that send. It works. It's just going to be confusing the first 3, 4, 5 times that you do it. Your reverb sends will default to 0 dB, a full send. I'm used to them being minus 12 dB. That's a Reason thing, and it makes perfect sense. But most DAWs will send at 0 dB, meaning that if you want more, then you got the option to go up to a full 12 dB over, which is actually plenty. You're then just going to want to balance your reverb here to say, so 0 dB send, overkill. Let's stop. Let's put that back. Whilst we're on reverbs, I could not find a reverb in Reaper that I liked, that I wanted to use. There seemed to be two options, neither of which. Now, maybe other people can come along and say, no, this is how you make them sound great. But again, 30 years in this business, couldn't easily work out how to get a nice sound from it. That's why I'm running one of my own reverbs out of Reason. You may notice that I've got the Wave Shaper or something similar on most of these. I was finding that it wasn't the most exciting mix. It's not the most exciting track. So I was adding a little bit of wave shaping to things. It's adding level, but it's also adding, it's dealing with some of the transients, but it's also adding some plain distortion, really. And that actually works quite nicely. We end up with a somewhat narrowed spectrum on our mix and somewhat dirty, but it does have a nice feel. So I can't complain about the sound of the mix. That's basically the same as, everything's the same. I did pull through on my lead sound. Let's solo this guy. Let's mute that and solo this. Except it's disappeared. So obviously at some stage I have managed to delete that. This is not going well. Not going well at all. I will stop now, close this, reopen it to get that back. All right, back again. I've reloaded the project and got my lead back. Yes, it will have been my fault that I deleted it, but as you see, while in some ways most people would go, oh, well, I'm just going to delete everything I've done and I'm going to redo this review, I think the fact that I've had so many difficulties reflects my standard usage situation of this software. Just thought I'd see if I could get those. No, still can't get it back. That every time I use it, I feel so, stressed that nothing stays the same as what it was before. And while I managed to make my peace with it, whilst I was focusing 100% on it, that was me focusing all the technicalities of their software and not being able to focus as much on the making music. And when I do the music thing, to either write my own music or compose for somebody else's song, or to mix in particular, whether it's my stuff or somebody else's stuff, but particularly when I'm being paid to mix for somebody, I'm not wanting to focus on technicality. To me, I hear lots of people who focus on technicality. They're like, oh, well, this mix should, this EQ should be this way because that's technically how you do it. And you end up with these boring mixes. If it's my channel, I would just swear. I need a good swearing right now after all this. It's very embarrassing, very frustrating. That I need to be creative. And if I can't trust my software, if I find it does weird stuff to me all the time, and that I'm constantly infuriated by it, how am I focusing on the art of my mixing? So this is why I'm not a Reaper fan. Now, to the mix here. Again, instrument is Reason. I did have quite a lot of, because I had used all my own effects. I'd just flown in all my own delays, all my own reverbs, the whole mix, compressors, everything were made up of my usual stuff, some of which are my own creation, my own VST, some of which are things like the ADHD leveling tool compressor reviewed a few weeks back. And then I thought, no, look, I really need to be fair and show the Reaper plugins. And that's fine. They have done a good job. Not as easy for me to use, but they have done a good job. So these are off. Found this Jesusonic phaser. Sounds quite good. Added, there is a delay with the chorus. That's nice. It saved me having to face the modulation system because it was, well, it was clunky. Took me a while to work out how to use this because there didn't seem to be any way to set your ratio, and then I realized, oh, you're supposed to click here. After some goofing around, I managed to get a curve that actually sounds good. It's not nice to use, along with having a cool name. It actually sounds quite good. So that ended up staying, and then added a bit of the old wave shaper. You can hear that's working quite nicely. There was a saturation one, equivalent to this saturation. I actually preferred the wave shaping one, even though I'm generally not a fan of wave shaping because I think it sounds nasty. This one, so long as you kept the levels low, I actually thought gave a really nice kind of to everything. So that was the most processed track, and then it's going off onto its reverb as well. The reverb, as I showed, is a send. I ended up having to use one of my own reverbs because I just wasn't happy. And that's our mix. It goes off to the masters. Now I will move my head. You can go up there, head. Onto the masters, because masters are important. That's the mix. Now we've got to master it. So balance all done. Happy with that. Come to our masters. Now again, we could click and open these things separately. I was initially going to just use my a Reason chain because I trusted it, and then it's like, no, I really should use as much as I can of the Reaper stuff because it's a review of Reaper, therefore of their plugins as well. Compression here, I think we'll be okay with levels. We'll manage. Actually, no, that will get too loud. The volume adjuster is to help you with this. So a little bit of over easy compression there just to give a nice glue and groove to the track. The saturation is mild, and as I said, ended up being a little too mild for me. It's not that it's wrong. It's just I was after a very noticeable result, and the wave shaper gave me that more than the saturation. If I was after a cleaner, brighter mix, which I often am, then the saturation probably is the right tool to have used for the job. There's a Jesusonic master limiter. After some time, I actually found that. Look ahead, S. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Again, 30 years in the business, I don't know what that means. So why write it there? I mean, to me, it looks like Spanish. It's trying to tell me something. Maybe that's telling me that it's in microseconds or picoseconds or something like that. And maybe it's just not a term I'm super used to. So it could be, again, be my fault, but it's confusing. It would be nicer if it had a GUI. So that seems to have worked fine. It doesn't seem to let anything through. So, brick-walled, done a decent enough job. You just set your thresholds by... Oh, this is funny. It doesn't have a gain reduction meter. It uses a slider that does nothing and then makes that jerk around. And the numbers are unreadable because they move so bloody fast. So I gotta say, that's really rather hilariously stupid because it's 2021 And this is the kind of thing that Opcode's Vision DSP would have solved back in 1998 or 99. So sorry guys, but that's just not good enough. There is a VU meter, and I feel like I can probably trust that. So I can be using my master limiter and then click. See, I said there was a purpose for this, to open this up. So whilst I was doing my mastering, I could have my, let's say I could have my VU over there and my looking at my master here. And this will show me my RMS, and that is a little too loud, but it's deliberately a little too loud because I know that I'm going to run this little process here of dropping it by 12 dB so that I get a voice music balance, because I do these as much as possible in one go with one recording. So the VU meter that you can pop out, that solves this meter being, well, just far too tiny. If there were a way to make this meter bigger, and there may be, then that would be a very nice meter. It's showing me all the different options. So I can see my RMS here, it is a bit over 12, and I can see my peaks. So it's giving me the right information, including numbers of my peaks and what have you, but it's just too small to see. So you can pop this fella out and resize it even. You can have like, ooh, world's biggest VU meters. So there are some things that are nice and work. And while you may think, oh, geez, I'm going to have to go off and get a third-party meter, if you dig around in the Jesusonic folder, you'll actually find that that is solved already for you. It's a shame, as I said before, that they don't have at least just a folder that says, here's your standard studio basics. We're giving you a delay. We're giving you a reverb that actually works nicely. We're giving you, some meters that are big enough to really see and make decisions on, all that kind of stuff. Chorus, it'd be nice to have a chorus you didn't need to look for. But overall, very happy with the resulting sound. And there's a button built in to be able to mono. Mono listening by just hitting a mono button really isn't the right way to do it. But if you don't have a single point source speaker, like a little horror tone cube, a mix cube, or a tone. Let's not be unkind to them. I loved my Oratones. I don't have them anymore because they died. They got too old. And a crazy ex-girlfriend put her finger through one of them. Didn't last long, that one. So at least the mono collapsed to mono, you can tell if your mix is going to translate adequately. It's never the same, but at least we can go mono. Yeah, I'm hearing all my bits. I am good to go. So mixing is pretty good, and you can achieve as good a sound as you want to get. If your mix gets bigger, you can put things into track folders, and then there are various other options for VCAs and aux sends and what have you. I've been playing in so many DAWs lately, I can't remember who's got what terminology, but there are quite a lot of options. And the fact that you can pop this out into a whole screen of its own is nice. That basically brings us to the end of this, the overview. We'll go over this again. There are some really good things with Reaper. Reaper is a fully featured, fully fledged, fully powerful DAW. There is very little that you can't achieve in Reaper one way or another. So it's super powerful. There's a lot of update. It's a very actively developed piece of software. So it's well worth the money if it's the right path for you to actually spend the money to keep, I think it's Justin and probably other people in the team, going developing the software for you. It has decent effects and they work. There is lots of chatter and community support if that's what you want, and you may well need it. And obviously, dollar cost, You know, you go up against Reason, Cubase, Studio One, Bitwig, anything like that that's similar in power and capability. Uh, and you're looking there at $400, $600 against the $60 cost. So dollar wise, there is huge value for money, but please, just as the same caution that I gave with Cakewalk, is that it's less in dollars to get in, but you'll then have to go get a set of instruments from somewhere. If you're happy with free, okay, but there's a massive cost with both of these paths, in that you're spending maybe a tenth of the money, but you're also buying what's probably going to be a lot of difficulty and confusion to get your head around the damn thing. Which brings me very much to the bad, which is that I find, as you have seen in this video, happen to me in real time, despite the fact that these problems were solved, it was in the box, it was controlled, that Reaper is confusing. It is prone to being overkill, like technical overkill. As I said, I am not here for technical reasons, I'm here for music. Music has a technical underpinning. You know, there's technical reasons why when you scratch a string, it makes noises. But that's not what I'm doing when I'm here. I'm here to make art. So technical overkill, it's prone to being immensely cluttered. I have tried, possibly with some deleterious side effects, to reduce some of that clutter to allow me to focus on what I want to do. That's either been a good thing, which helped me for a couple of days, or it's been a good and bad thing, which helped me for a couple of days, and now has perhaps scuppered and been the reason that these things failed on camera. I don't know. And that's confusing, overkill, cluttered. As I mentioned before, decent effects, but there are no synths worth talking about. So you're going to have to go off and find them, which is going to either add to your cost or add to a huge amount of wasted time as you bugger about with free synths that probably aren't worth the time that you've invested them. If you do want to go down that path, then I will just say to you straight up, if you're after synthesizers and you want to program synthesizers and you don't want to pay any money for them, go get Surge. Surge is the king of the free synths. It was a payware synth. The second one is Vital. Vital is... I have my frustrations with it, but I get nice sounds out of it when I've spent the time with it. You'll probably find that there are more presets floating around for Vital over time because it's prettier, but they're two fully powerful synths that you can do whatever you want to in terms of synthland. However, if you just are looking for tons of presets, I would say probably bite the bullet and go off and buy something, whether that's Dune or something from Uhi like Zebra or something like that. You know, one of his bigger synths. Hive, I think that's Hive is probably the generalist synth from him. Omnisphere is probably going to be overkill for you, but that sort of thing. But or Predator, Rob Papin's Predator, something like that comes with, I think it's 2,000 patches or what have you, and chances are you can dial up something that's going to fit in, and you're going to save yourself a lot of time and heartache messing about with free things that probably just roger you more than anything else. So no synths worth talking about in Reaper is a thing you've got to get your head around and come to terms with. No instruments, no sounds. The effects, as we've spoken about, are confusing. You will struggle, and that will see you probably, again, wasting time looking around KVR trying to find, what free effects can I use? And there are plenty out there, and there are some really good things, there are some really stupid things, but it's a thing to bear in mind. You've paid your money, and while there's a lot of effects in there, and a lot of them are going to work nicely, they are not easy to use, which means you're probably going to go, they suck. Overall, the big bad is that it's not easy to learn or start with. It's too techy, and you probably are going to find yourself spending a lot of time trawling communities, YouTube, and Google looking to find out, how do I do this thing, which should be a lot more self-evident. So swings and roundabouts. People will love it. People who love Reaper will want to throw hand grenades at me. If you've reached this far, don't. Solve the problem. Get Reaper to the point where it becomes more elegant, so these things are not a problem, and then you'll find that more people will be like, wow, Reaper really is the best way to go. You know, if you want to use your might upstream to solve these genuine issues that are with the software that you love. If it's not a problem, don't need to throw hand grenades at me, don't need to pressure Reaper to solve what for you is a non-problem, and for me is going to be a non-problem because it's not a software that I'm going to use, I'm sorry. And it's not a software that I'm going to recommend for beginners in particular, or for anyone who isn't incredibly techie-minded, who doesn't love millions of windows and options, because I think there are better ways to do it that are going to help you focus on what you should be here for, which is making music, which is an art form. So again, Benedict for Higher Hertz. If you want to keep up to date with what Higher Hertz is putting forward, please go over to higherhertz.com, sign up, and that way you'll see the information and videos and reviews that they're having come through regularly. You have a great day now.